And there we go. All right. So we're back here again, meeting virtually. Uh, Been kind of old business now. Most of you are probably used to this, but I think the options are going to open us up for us here in the coming months. I know there's been some good progress with some of the pandemic indicators, and this is Eastgate's first week back for the staff working in the office. So it's been interesting to get everything kind of settled and back to where we were almost a year and a half ago. And we're putting the pieces in place and developing the policies with some of the MPOs around the state and our state agencies and the CDC guidance on how to make sure all of our practices are as safe as possible for everyone that we interact with. But I do think there is some possibility for us to see some in-person meetings coming up here in the next month or so. So, I'll definitely be communicating that to the group through the CAB update and meeting emails and correspondence there to let you know about the opportunities. One good thing that I think has come out of this is that we're going to continue to make this form of accessibility open even once we go back to in-person. So we have made the capabilities available in our conference rooms in our office to stay connected virtually and open this option up for people that may not be comfortable yet, or it may just be easier for you to connect this way and be able to still access the meetings and content and interact with us. So the virtual meetings may be winding down, and we may be transitioning back to in-person here shortly. But that option, we're going to try and make it as easy as possible to still interact that way. So I think that's a good thing, and I think that'll help us reach some more folks and make it easier on all of you to still interact and hear the information every month. So that's just a little quick update about kind of where we're at with developing those policies. It is coming where we're going to open our office back up. To what extent at this point and how fast that'll happen, I think is still a little bit unclear. But I would expect our July meeting to have at least a small in-person component. But as far as the specifics of that, I will be sure to communicate that when that happens. But to get into the meat of our meeting today, one of your own, CAB member, Samantha Yanucci, is going to be presenting today. So I'm going to close out this presentation here. And I will transfer over the power to Samantha so she can share her screen.
All right.
So Samantha, feel free to take it away.
Awesome, thank you. Let me just, working with two screens here, which is still fairly new to me, so. Let's see, can you see it? Are you guys able to see my screen or not?
Yes, they're good. Yep.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, so hi everyone, and thank you for having me today. So my name's Samantha Yanucci. If it looks like I'm looking up, sorry, that's just my screen is up here. But my name's Samantha Yanucci. I do planning and community development for KO Consulting, LLC. And with me today, I have Kristen Olme.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Chief Development Strategist for KO Consulting.
So we're going to talk to you today about what we see as our green industrial future for the Rust Belt and particularly for our Mahoning, Trumbull, Columbiana region. So I want to start with a question. What would you say if there were a way to reactivate dormant manufacturing plants, spur economic growth in manufacturing and agricultural sectors, restore soil health for food production, and position this region to succeed in the new economy? I think we all could agree that would be a great solution. But what would you say if you knew the solution has been around for all of time, or at least one of the solutions? So we're talking today about industrial hemp. So what is industrial hemp? It's an annual cross-pollinating plant with rapid growth and development that results in significant biomass accumulation. Most notably, hemp is one of the best choices in the world for carbon sequestration. 2.5 acres of industrial hemp can absorb 15 tons of CO2. And because it grows so fast, it's one of the fastest CO2 to biomass conversion tools and more efficient than agroforestry. And secondly, hemp restores soil health. So it's known to clean polluted land by absorbing heavy metals from the soil, which is really important in areas that have a heavy industrial past. So that makes hemp a pretty valuable preceding crop in farming rotations. Hemp is also very resilient. It can grow in infertile soils and is naturally resistant to most pests. It's efficient and has a very short maturation point from 80 to 120 days. And it's very versatile in terms of manufacturing and energy usage. There's over 50,000 products that can be made from industrial hemp. It's also ancient. The use of hemp can be traced back to over 10,000 years ago to create textiles and sails and paper and for medicinal uses. And perhaps most importantly is industrial hemp is not marijuana. While they're both from the cannabis sativa plant, hemp has a THC composition of less than 0.03%, so it has no psychoactive properties. And on that note, we're going to go through just a brief history of hemp. So a very brief history. Starting with 8,000 BCE, that's the first, when the first use of hemp was realized. It was cultivated and cherished for thousands of years as a food, a fabric for sails, for fuel, and again, for medicinal purposes. And then in 1937, the passing of the Marijuana Tax Act effectively banned hemp cultivation in the United States. And there were a few points in between then too, of course. So in the 1700s, American farmers were required by law to grow hemp as a staple crop, and many of America's founding fathers advocated for its benefits. And then sometime in the early 1900s, the word marijuana replaced cannabis in US language, actually as a way to create a negative association of the plant with a Mexican population. And then in 1929, when the ban on alcohol was lifted, Harry Anslinger attacked the cannabis plant, making false claims of its effects on its marijuana users, calling them names such as wild beasts. So there was a lot of propaganda and marketing materials to demonize hemp, which led to the 1937 banning of hemp production. And then in 2014, President Obama signs the Farm Bill into law, which allowed research institutions to begin piloting hemp farming programs. 2018, the Farm Bill removes hemp and its derivatives from the Controlled Substances Act, thus legalizing it in the United States. So why are we talking about hemp and why in Ohio? We believe it's one of the best ways to honor the past of our state and of our economy to succeed in the future. So first, we're farmers. According to USDA and RCS, food and ag is Ohio's #1 industry. 44% of Ohio is considered prime farmland, and 99% of the farms are owned by farm families. It's important to point to a point that I already made, is that hemp could actually grow in infertile soils. So there's often the conversation about using land for competing purposes of industrial purposes and food production, but that might not be as big as it's theoretically made out to be. There's still some research and development that needs to go into that. But second, in Ohio, we're manufacturers. So according to USDA and RCS, and I'm not sure how this holds in 2021 or how recent this stat is, but Ohio apparently ranks 3rd among states in the area of manufacturing. It's also a leading producer of automobiles and trucks. So hemp can support these leading industries. How industrial hemp farming repairs the soil for greater yields and healthier crops for farmers, leading to better health outcomes for the people and the planet. And it can be used to produce the goods. So biofuels to support the US through the energy transition from fossil fuels to green energy, and in the creation of consumer goods such as food, textiles, and most notably to replace plastics that are derived from petrochemicals. So why now? Because we simply can't afford to wait. And we're not just saying that. This is a global priority that we're seeing everywhere, right? And with federal support. So on Friday, President Biden's federal budget proposal not only incentivized the green economy, but actually disinvest in fossil fuels. 3 points from the proposal are that $14 billion is proposed in new money to support government agencies for policies and programs to combat climate change. There's a proposed $265 billion to expand and extend federal tax breaks for companies that build clean energy sources. And he proposes a $35 billion cut over the next decade for oil, gas, and coal companies. So we're seeing an active disinvestment in fossil fuel industry. And on that note, it's important to mention that hemp, as biofuel, it's not a competition for the fossil fuel industry. Rather, it's a good way to aid in the transition from being a fossil fuel reliant economy to a green energy reliant economy. But overall, the proposal called for $800 billion over the next decade in new spending and tax breaks in an effort to accelerate the deployment of clean energy technologies. And it's not just the federal government, right? So according to Bloomberg, 86% of investors say climate change will be at the center of their policy or a major factor in the next 2 years. That's up from 33% just 2 years ago. And most interesting to me is that energy storage and sustainable agriculture are actually the two sectors that are of the most interest to investors. So that's even out interesting: wind power, solar energy, and electric transportation. So sustainable ag there's definitely a lot of push for it. But we believe our region is primed to lead the Midwest hemp revolution. We have fantastic physical infrastructure, manufacturing plants aside. We have a great transportation network, right? We have ports on Lake Erie and the Ohio River. We have 2 international airports close by in Cleveland and Pittsburgh. 2 major interstates run right through our area. We have the social infrastructure. We have dozens of accredited colleges and universities here in the area. We have a lot of organizations working on workforce development and policy and research efforts to support the green economy and green manufacturing transition. And there's a lot of financial investments due to long-time disinvestment in the area. We're eligible for hub zones and opportunity zones, enterprise zones, CRA areas, grant opportunities. There's a lot of opportunity to aid in our transition. But we believe we could be a leader in the green transition in various industries. So some industries, the building industry. I don't know who has heard of hempcrete, but it's actually a phenomenal building material that is mold resistant, pest resistant, fire resistant, that has great insulating properties. And hempcrete is kind of a misnomer because while it's not load bearing, you still have to use support beams to support its structure. It has a lot of potential to create healthier buildings for our families and our communities. The bioplastics industry. So a lot of major corporations have committed to a shift to 100% renewable resources. So McDonald's, for example, by 2025 intends to use 0% of their packaging from plastics that are derived from petrochemicals. They're looking for plant-derived materials and recycled materials and biodegradable materials, of which hemp is a great choice to help with that. And also the automotive industry. So this sports car here is called the Renew sports car. It was created from this gentleman, Bruce Dietzen, I think is his name. He was born in Ohio. The car is created from hemp paneling and runs on hemp biodiesel. The hemp paneling is actually 10 times stronger than steel, and running on biodiesel, they say it's kind of like a carbon net zero process. But this is also not a new concept. Back in 1941, Henry Ford released a prototype for a car that was built out of hemp panels, hemp and other plant materials, and also ran on hemp and soy biodiesels. Unfortunately, it never made the market. especially as the fossil fuel industry became bigger and bigger. But he saw ahead the degradation, the environmental degradation that personal automobiles and the automotive industry would have on the environment. And he really wanted to create self-reliance by creating a car that was grown essentially from the land, and he wanted to support local farmers during the Depression era. There's also a lot of local opportunity. I'm going to pass it over to Kristen to talk about a project we're working on called the Green Industrial Manufacturing Ecosystem, or GIMME for short. Thank you.
So at this time we want to talk to you about some of the work that the GIMME has been doing to provide a real world model. So we're creating a model for green industrial manufacturing. The first thing, we want to create and retain local talent and a skilled workforce. Two, we're to adapt to heavy industrial infrastructure from the Rust Belt's past. We all know how many vacant industrial steel mill locations we still have, and how can we adapt those to meet the energy needs of tomorrow. And three, to create the circular supply chains and economies rooted in manufacturing. So this is our GIMME roadmap. This is where we're at. We want to continue to build partnerships and collaborations with others working in the hemp space. We're working right now with a client to create a workforce development program that'll focus on the hemp industry with a local nonprofit partner. Begin a regional strategy that includes Eastern Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, and Northern West Virginia. We currently are working, we have a grant application that we'll know if we were funded in October that would really look at that 3-state strategy, and there's probably 36 stakeholders who kind of came to the table in that application process. Identify resources, opportunities, and gaps to grow the industrial hemp capacity. Build a GIMME model that streamlines efforts between the sectors and the industries. And then, of course, we're working to secure a physical location to begin a pilot project for R&D purposes. And then this is the challenges in most of the research and development we've been doing. The first being supply chain, the processing conundrum. We've invested a lot of time talking to farmers in northern Trumbull County, in southern Mahoning County, and Ashtabula, and they're interested in growing, but the problem is having the processing facilities to basically take their crop. Absence of market data. Where are the growers and buyers and suppliers? Where can we find those supply chain pipelines? A lack of a sales pipeline. Those are sort of the problems on our supply chain. And then in terms of lack of R&D, what are the best farming practices for this crop? The relative profitability compared to other commodity crops. We want to be able to have that research and that data. And then lastly, risk, which has been mostly regulatory, and the arbitrary THC limit is sort of what we have heard at this point in time for some of the challenges. And in our work and our research, we're trying to ensure that we overcome them. And I think I flip it back over to Samantha this time.
But yeah, essentially, we're seeing that hemp is a great crop that could be used to replace plastics derived from petrochemicals. And we see a shift globally, and that we're moving forward, and we just think we're either going to keep up or fall behind. So that's why we're putting a lot of time and effort into this agricultural industry. But we have a website up for GIMME that you could follow, where we'll post project development updates. And yeah, we could open it to any questions. And I just want to say right now, I just realized after all this time, I could have presented on this screen by looking at the camera. So I do apologize.
So I have a question for you, Samantha or Kristen. Have you found other regions that have started investing in this and making this a part of their economic strategy?
So yes, the short answer is yes. The University of Pittsburgh is really leading the way in terms of, so a couple things. Penn State University is doing a lot of research around CBD, hemp products, and cannabis. They've got a full-scale hemp program that they're developing out. And then the University of Pitt came out with the New Age Marshall Plan that is incorporating new green manufacturing technologies, listing hemp and green manufacturing as one of them. So those would be like, if we're looking for who's doing a lot of this work very close. Also, the University of Toledo has started to broach the industrial hemp subject matter as well. And then Cleveland has a hemp school located in the city of Cleveland that is accredited by the Ohio Department of Education. And those would be my samples from the hemp side. And then there's a lot of the regenerative agriculture, and I know Sam was going to jump in.
Well, so what I wanted to say on that is what we seen a lot of in the beginning of our research was a lot of people just interested in the CBD and the medicinal and therapeutic uses for CBD. But we've actually shifted our model to sway away from that and look purely at the industrial purposes that the fiber and the seeds can be and the stalks can be used for. And currently, I would say that's largely undertapped. Especially in the regions that can produce hemp agriculturally. But I'll just add another comment until we have another question. But yeah, on that note, I mean, the lack of processing facilities has been the biggest hurdle for farmers. It's kind of a conundrum. It's like people won't grow until they realize that they have someone who they could send their hemp to process it, but then you can't establish a processing facility if you can't identify the yields. So it's pretty interesting, and I think that we'll learn a lot if we get support to do this regional strategy, because it's been the same all throughout Western PA, Northern West Virginia, and Eastern Ohio, all the stakeholders that we've talked with.
I saw in the chat, it looks like Tom had asked a question mentioning corn gas killing small engines. He asked, does hemp fuel have any history with similar results?
Corn gas killed. I'm honestly not sure about that. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, I haven't. Have you ever heard of anything about that?
Well, no, and I think it's one of the reasons why there's also such a need for the investment in the high end of the research and development, and that's really what we're trying to be, at least a catalyst of the conversation of hey, we could do a lot of research here, and we've got the industrial space to grow, and do a lot of R&D projects and.
Great. Pete, looked like you had your hand up there. Go ahead.
Yes. Samantha and Kristen, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned many academic institutions that have been researching industrial hemp. Do you know of any local communities anywhere, particularly economically depressed communities like ours, that have actually turned to hemp as a way to produce a successful economic recovery, or is that too far in the future right now?
I mean, we just legalized hemp in 2018, and then you look at the pandemic, put everybody on hold. Everyone here on the call, think a lot of things were on hold for the last year. So, the Kentucky, if you want research, Senator Mitch McConnell, when he was majority leader, he pushed the 2018 Farm Bill with the legalization of the hemp piece, and Kentucky has the most R&D, research and development on what hemp could do. They had those grants a decade before the legalization. And then when it was legalized in 2018, Ohio's program took a full year and a half to come online. So we're only really in the first full year of the legalization here in the state of Ohio. So I think we've got a long way to go to answer your question, but I think we can get there.
But one thing, so maybe not an economically depressed area, but actually Alberta, Canada has reclaimed their coal. So they also have their economy running on coal and fossil fuels, and they are big in the hemp space now. So they kind of they've made that transition into the green economy. And for a long time, the US was actually buying hemp from Canada. So yeah, we haven't really had the time yet to see which companies will choose to use hemp to revitalize. But we should be the first.
This is Michael Harvey. I just put my questions in the chat, so I want to forget them. So the two things I thought of were, how difficult is it to adjust existing processing plants that already use fibrous material for products to use hemp? Like, you're already making toilet paper out of trees. How hard is it to substitute the tree fibrous material with hemp? And could we like have hybrid processing plants before we had hemp only plants? Like, I don't think it's like peanut allergies or anything like that.
And so I believe that you could definitely, you could have hybrid plants before anything. I mean, there's already bamboo toilet paper, right? So once you have the fiber, I mean, that's not really, once you have the fiber and the pulp, that's definitely not a difficult process. There's a lot of manufacturing operations that can easily transition into using these materials. We're actually working with someone in Cleveland who is facilitating a medical manufacturing supply hub, which they want to do R&D to see how we could bring more greener materials into the medical supply industry. So
and decided they wanted to go to hemp toilet paper, this could probably happen very, very quickly. Like, it's just large companies haven't decided they want. Okay. And then the next thing is there a possibility to get like carbon offset accreditations for starting to grow hemp in large like volumes?
So that we're gonna have to see what. So we're gonna have to see what happens with the tax credit process, right? Like, are they going to offer? Is within this federal budget that was announced last week, when you're talking about these tax incentives, are they going to offer those type of tax incentives to startups for, if you're growing X amount of hemp acreage? I'm not sure. We won't be able to answer that until we look at how they put together the packaging on these green tax incentives.
But there are a lot of
I was also just thinking for like pre-existing, for like, I know there's been a lot of questioning of how effective the carbon offset like program has been, because it doesn't really seem to help the environment. And like, if this was something that they were given as an alternative that they could then possibly turn into a profitable venture in the future, it would give the people with money and power an incentive to make more money, which might actually make it happen. And so I'm just trying to finagle it that way. So
we hope to see a lot of incentives and financial structures to support hemp. I mean, there's already a lot of talk around these structures to support regenerative ag in general. So we have high hopes.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, and Tom, you said, are we familiar with a gentleman named Brian Kessler? Not Brian, but his brother, right? Or nephew. I forget.
He sent that to you privately. But
oh, my bad. Sorry.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Are there any other questions?
I mean, we just think that, I would just say that, we think there's a lot, we understand it's a new industry, but there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of opportunity to convert. We make a lot of plastic, we have plastic injection molding companies, and to further, Michael's point is that those plastic injection molding companies that are here, if, they wanted to transition to hemp-based pellets, they could do that. And that technology exists. We worked with a client that has a hemp-based pellet. They're out of Michigan. And so those opportunities already are on the market and currently exist. We want to continue discussing, giving people this information, sort of extend the conversation, and see what we think our region could do and get behind.
You mentioned that Canada is further ahead than we are, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but somewhere in the world, they're doing more of this. I'm sure they're growing hemp. So where is that happening? Can you name a place where they're using hemp in a big way?
Yeah, I mean, Canada is a good
Besides Canada, I'm not talking about here, on this continent. Any
you
Well, there's a lot of European countries that already have a lot more utilize
China.
the hemp-based products than the United States does. There's a lot of home building. Some of you could really enjoy watching a lot of information and videos on some of the places. Australia is another country that I know. Well, wait, is Australia a continent or a country? But I know there's a lot going on in Australia that is taking place of some of their building materials.
Yeah.
I mean, the United States, regulatory is also where we have to overcome. Can you, like in the European Union, the EU has approved hempcrete to use for building materials and products. What does that look like in the United States? How does that pass different structural standards? There's a long way to go, but we really think we've talked with a lot of people around the United States, and they feel that the Rust Belt in this Midwest region really is kind of homemade for hemp, and that they would really, if you're looking at building out the size of the supply chain that's going to be necessary. Look, Coca-Cola Company is talking about by the end of 2022, all their plastic, all their containers, everything you hold a 6-pack with, their 12-pack cases are going to be all biodegradable materials. So who's going to make that? Who's Coca-Cola going to have that contract with? I want to see it come out of the Mahoning Valley region or the Midwest, right? So we're just trying to do as much as we can to educate on this subject matter and talk about what's possible.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Samantha and Kristen, thank you so much. It's always great to kind of hear fresh ideas and, especially when it comes to diversifying economies and pieces that we can plug right into our local area. So thank you for that. For everyone that's interested, the slideshow that Samantha and Kristen used is up on our website on our agendas and minutes page if you didn't see it in the emails, so you could access it there. I think both of your contact information is in that slideshow as well. So if you have any further questions, I'm sure you could reach out to either of them and they'd be happy to chat more with you.
Thank you so much.
All right, so I'm going to bring up the rest of our agenda. All right, so next up, talking about General Policy Board. That is coming up at the end of next month, July 26th. So we'll have one more CAB meeting before that board meeting. If anyone has information that they think that the Citizens Advisory Board should share with the Policy Board, we do have our report out section during that meeting. Just let me know and I can make sure to include that in the CAB report. And additionally, if you'd like to attend that meeting, also let me know and I can make sure to get you the most accurate information regarding that. We're still, like I said, at the top of this meeting, we're unsure about what the in-person is going to look like, but by that meeting, we will know for sure and have better guidance. So I can keep you posted if you're interested in attending and hearing that information. So talking about resolutions for passage, there is one resolution available today. I did send it out just before the meeting started. So it's a resolution to amend the area-wide water quality management plan to adopt updated wastewater treatment planning prescription language for Mahoning County in accordance with Section 208 of the Clean Water Act. So this is a program that Stephanie Dyer oversees at our office in the environmental department. This oversees kind of the wastewater management agent or areas for the region and just getting some of that language for Mahoning County tightened up a little bit and making sure that it's perfectly reflective of the way that they're operating. So that resolution is included in the agenda for review, and I will be sending out an email to the CAB board members to take a vote on this. But if anybody has any questions or comments or discussion about this, we can pause for a minute and feel free to mention anything that's on your mind regarding this resolution. All right, not hearing anything, we'll move on, and I'll send that email out to the board members following this meeting. So in the discussion portion of this meeting, the last few months, there's been some talk about CAB subcommittees. So Kevin, I'm going to put you on the spotlight here. I know we had talked a little bit about this earlier today. Just kind of I threw these bullet points out under the subcommittee conversation, just as some suggestions on what you all think we could do with this subcommittee situation. So an idea for a subcommittee organizer. So that could be just a position, on the CAB, someone that is responsible for scheduling the meetings, bringing everyone together, making sure all of those meetings are run effectively and efficiently. I think there needs to be a little bit of discussion about how many subcommittees and what are the topic areas. I know, Kevin, you had mentioned a couple things earlier. And then additionally, when would you want to hold these, how often, and what type of format would you all like to see happen from this? So Kevin, if you've got anything to kind of talk on, or we could open this up to the rest of the board, and feel free to have some discussion on this topic.
You can hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, thank you for this opportunity. First of all, in the past, we usually had committee meetings, most recently, about an hour. They started about an hour before the actual CAB meeting. Sometimes when we had, say, 4 or 6 subcommittees, we may have just alternated them, where we had one or two before the meetings and what have you. From the conversation we had at our last CAB meeting, I think 3 committees at the moment will pretty much cover all the important topics, or the topics of recent. One would be the corridor, the urban corridor committee. That would deal with, for just the urban areas, the city of Warren and the city of Youngstown. Just what are we doing with the rehabilitation of certain corridors? I know that we've been in Justin, Eastgate did a corridor study for Belmont Avenue. And I think our EAG, our Economic Action Group's doing one for Market Street, and they're just starting one for Mahoning Avenue in the city of Youngstown. They're taking ideals right now. They're meeting with Mike Keys and Doug Franklin about maybe doing one up in the city of Warren as well. But that would be a nice committee to see where we're going, since we're on, we'll be breaking ground. I know, like the Western Reserve Port Authority, we purchased a couple of buildings on Mahoning Avenue, commercial buildings. So, we're going to be part of that group as well. So, but the corridors and the rehabilitation of certain corridors, the main corridors in the urban areas, might be one. Obviously, fresh off the presentation that MS Consultants gave, the river corridor development of the land use for the Mahoning River once the dams are pulled out. That's always a nice one. And another one that was brought up by Jack was the Transportation Equity Committee, on how we could make a better effort of reconstituting some of the capital assets and transportation assets of our urban areas, instead of investing money into new capital and transportation projects out into the far suburbs, or the second outer ring. And those are 3 good committees that we could start with. Once again, the transportation equity, 2 would be the river corridor development, and 3 would be the corridor rehabilitation in the 2 urban cities, the 2 urban areas. And that's a start I think we can make, and maybe gets that should attract enough participation to at least start those three. And we'll just hear from the group if they think that's sufficient or we should add any more. But those are three to start with, just to start our participation back.
So Kevin, you can count me in on the urban corridor.
All right, Jerome. And that's one and that one is follows some of my position here at the Port Authority as well. We're starting to invest our own money into that, not just resources, not just EAG group resources to put plans together or seek information from the communities. The Port Authority is starting to put its money where its mouth is on this. So I will be part of that committee as well.
Okay, that's great. I think that helps kind of set some guardrails for where we want to be and where we want to see these kind of go. I think something that I could do to help kind of push these along a little bit is in the follow-up email to this meeting, I can just put a note in there to have any of you that are interested in participating in any of these communities just kind of email response back to me, and I can start drafting a list of people that are interested in participating, so we can start building out some of these subcommittees.
And I'm sure for some of our members that aren't present at the moment, like Rex, I mean, they'll be very interested in like the river corridor development.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I will throw that in the follow-up email. So keep an eye out for that if you are interested. We've got a couple names down here, taking notes already, but if you are interested, feel free to respond to that email with that. Do any of you think, or are any of you particularly aligned to the idea of a subcommittee organizer? Do you think one of you should be kind of the person that kind of drives this along? I know Ken had mentioned, at least to me, that these would kind of be CAB run and facilitated. We would try and kind of stay back and just kind of provide minimal assistance where necessary. And these would just really be an act of the Citizens Advisory Board. Maybe we could volunteer Kevin as the CAB board chair to act as that person, but
A little de facto responsibility.
right.
I might be willing to sign up for more of that, depending on how the next month goes. And I was going to say that I was going to send you an email, Justin, that I'm probably not going to be at next month's CAB meeting, but I should be back in time for the General Policy Board meeting.
Sure.
But,
yeah, not a problem.
And at that time, I'll know whether I would want to do something more of, or sign myself up for something of this nature. But
yeah, certainly.
I don't know at this point.
So I know, at least I feel this way, but I bemoan every survey request that I'm sent. But if any of you feel that that could be a good way to maybe answer some of these questions and collect a large amount of responses from the group,
I do.
I could put together a survey, maybe using some of these is the basis for some of those questions and trying to suss out people's interest, trying to get a sense of when people would prefer to make these available. I know Kevin had mentioned prior attempts at subcommittees had been done an hour before the CAB meeting. I think maybe a survey response would give us a good sense of people that are interested in participating and when their availability may be. So if that's not, if you don't recoil at the idea of me sending out a survey and taking 5 minutes of your time to fill that out, I can put that together for everyone and include that in the follow-up email.
Justin,
Yes.
I have a question for you, and I guess something that others can discuss. I think the idea of an urban corridor subcommittee and of a Mahoning River subcommittee, those are very good ideas, and those are very salient topics. I'm wondering if there ought to be also an economic development subcommittee, because really that is the major challenge in the Mahoning Valley and has been probably for the last 40 years. And of course, in the Economic Development Committee, we can talk more about the hemp proposal, and I really enjoyed that presentation, and any other economic development proposals out there.
And I think, Pete, we want to limit ourselves, you know, so not to spread out our participation. If we have too many committees, so I mean, I think we should concentrate on maybe 3, maybe 4 at the most, until we get our membership back up, which I'm almost certain we will do once we are starting to be able to meet in person. We just don't want to have too many committees, but an ED committee is one that we always had in the past.
I think what I can do, Pete, to kind of accommodate this request of yours is to build something like this into the survey. So we could start out with these 3 initial proposed and see what the generalized interest is from kind of our entire pool of CAB respondents. And then we could also have some questions related to, you know, if you would like to propose additional topics, you know, provide that as an option for a response within that survey. I think another good thing to keep in mind with these subcommittees is, you know, what's the ultimate goal of these? If it's just to have more time to talk about these topics, you know, that's fine. But if there's a defined kind of like tangible target that you think these subcommittees could really attack and chase after, I think that'll help make these a little more successful than maybe they have been in the past.
And Justin, if I interrupt for a second, I think with the urban corridors, I think to the end, some of the output that we'll have there will go. We need information like that, or just ideals like that, as we seek grants. You know, we're trying to seek grants or other angel funding for you know, for our needs on, you know, for these particular projects. And I think some of the information that are ideals that we would get from these committees, we could use. You know, my staff could use it, or other staffs that are trying to seek such funding could use as well.
Very good. All right. And does anybody else have any thoughts on these subcommittees? Any other ideas? Any other?
You know, I attended the mayor's rollout for the stimulus money, and during the course of that, Eastgate's name came up quite a few times, and especially because you've done a lot of the research on those various areas. For example, the Belmont corridor, there were a lot of questions about that, and there's a lot of interest in, you know, doing something with that corridor. So you're going to have a vital part in how we spend that stimulus money.
Certainly, that's a big topic. Yeah, in the city of Youngstown and all across the region, you know,
Yeah.
all of the communities are getting those types of funds and figuring out applicable ways to spend those efficiently.
Well, you've done some of the research also that will help in, you know, getting those grants started.
Certainly. All right, great. So I will work on getting that survey put together. and sent out to you all. If you could all just take a couple minutes to fill that out when it comes through your inbox, that'd be helpful, and we can review those results at the next meeting and talk through them. The only other thing regarding the discussion session of this meeting that I wanted to mention is that we are halfway through the year about. I think this is a good time to kind of reflect on what we've accomplished already in the beginning of this year, the first half. Obviously, this virtual format is a little bit limiting when it comes to discussion, but I think, as kind of today shows that we've kind of all gotten used to it and have done a pretty good job considering. But one of the things about CAB is that we want to continue to get more people in front of this information, and whether that's sharing information about the board to people you know or people you think may be interested, or to other groups that you're involved in, to try and get more people interested, or if that includes bringing in speakers on topics that you think would be attractive to a different audience, or bring other folks in. I'm always open to that. If you have anybody in mind that you think would be interested, but you're not comfortable reaching out to them, you could send their information my way, and I'd be happy to reach out to tell them what we do here at Eastgate and the CAB. And if you've got suggestions for topics that you'd like to see covered at a future meeting. I know this conversation that we had today with Samantha and Kristen kind of came out of a discussion from earlier this year, I believe. It was after we had Guy Coviello from the Chamber present on, I think, the Lake to River pipeline project, spurred this conversation about kind of green industrial investment. So we were able to kind of facilitate this into our schedule. So if anybody has ideas, feel free to send them my way anytime. We're always looking for content to share with you all. It's not always just kind of about what Eastgate's doing that we could present to you, but other things that could, spur conversation and our thought on certain topics. So just kind of keep that in mind. Moving on, the announcements. Just one item here this month. The fiscal year 2022 to 2026 Transit Development Program draft report is available. Myrta Reyes-Chapman, our transit program manager at our office, runs this program. The draft report is on our website. You can look through that. It's a pretty comprehensive document covering all things transit that you could ever hope to learn about. But if you're looking through that and there are things you have questions on, or you have comments on why certain things are a certain way, feel free to reach out to her. Her email address is included on this slide. Comments about the report specifically are due back to her June 17th. But if you have just general transit comments, she's always happy to talk with you and provide any information you may be interested in. Other than that, that's all that I have for you on the agenda today. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to share with the board? Any questions or comments about stuff that was brought up?
Justin, I have a question for Samantha. Samantha, what organization or part of the State Department is spearheading in the expansion of industrial hemp? Is there any State Department that's doing that, or maybe Jobs Ohio?
I don't believe so. That's actually a Kristen question. I could go ask her real quick. Yeah, let me go ask her actually, because that's an important question. Hold on one second.
And while she's doing that, can I jump in with a couple of things?
Go for it, Pete.
Okay, two separate unrelated things. First of all, has Eastgate done any research on whether it is legal to spend federal stimulus money on in Youngstown on the EPA mandated combined sewer overflow mitigation project, which is going to cost a total of $35 million? That's the first question. And then the separate unrelated issue is, If this board conducts in-person meetings at a city park pavilion or a Mill Creek Park pavilion over the summer, do you have the technical capability to make it possible for some people to join virtually if they still want to do so and aren't even comfortable coming to an outdoor park pavilion?
Good questions. So the first one, the American Rescue Plan funds that the city of Youngstown has gotten, I do not know that we have done any research on that, but I am fairly certain that those specifics of what are eligible uses of those funds have been determined. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure specifically related to the wastewater project, but
Yeah, I know
I
it
can't
can be
actually.
used for infrastructure. It can be used for infrastructure, so I don't see any reason why we couldn't use a little bit of money to speed that process up and get that crappy smell out of that park.
Great, thanks, Tom. Yeah, and I do believe that Youngstown still has a survey available and some other engagement options for the use of those funds on the city's website. So if you are interested in providing that type of feedback to the city, I think you can navigate to the city's website and make those comments to them to help them come to that decision to spend those dollars in whichever way you think is best suited. And then your second question, Pete, about holding a meeting outside, certainly an option. I do think that you present, the one kind of obstacle is providing kind of that remote access to it. And I think that would depend on the location that we select and what is made available to us. But certainly something that we could think about. And I think as we develop kind of our in-person policies and procedures, we can look more into that as an option for a summertime meeting. So thank you for that.
Just one more point. I wanted to put a little footnote on this to make it clear that the idea of using the stimulus money for the Ohio EPA combined sewer overflow mitigation project in the city of Youngstown. That is not my original idea. It was presented by someone in a letter to the editor to the Vindicator. I think it was one of those Saturday unsigned sound off letters, and I don't know why somebody wouldn't want to put their name to that, but I thought it was a good idea and I wanted to pass it on. And in the interest of not plagiarizing, I wanted to make that point.
Very good,
Kevin,
Pete. Thanks.
And what was the question, real quick?
from Kevin.
What is there from the state level, from the state of Ohio or one of its departments, is there an initiative to develop the hemp growing industry? Or maybe somebody is there a similar initiative at Jobs Ohio?
So there is. So right now there's
Specifically for industrial manufacturing.
specifically for the industrial manufacturing piece. I was actually with Jobs. I was actually with a member of Team Neo this afternoon, and they will fund industrial hemp-based manufacturing projects if it meets the job creation component. And then specifically like at Jobs Ohio, they are starting to look at take an interest in a statewide industrial hemp-based / manufacturing strategy. So I hope that answers your question. But I was told a year and a half ago they weren't ready to fund yet. And then literally just this afternoon, I was in Cleveland with a member of Team Neo that said that they're ready to go ahead. And if there's the manufacturing component, they're interested.
Great, thank you for that.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
About the hemp thing. I was on the chat with Samantha about hemp and the regulations, and I think that if you're pushing for hemp to be used this way, I think the regulations, you need to talk to them about the actual science behind the regulations instead of allowing them to get away with the nonsense that's really based on old stereotypes and madness. And it seems that's what it's for. And what I asked was, she said farmers get to burn their whole crops. Okay, now how valuable would that crop be to a criminal or to anyone who wanted marijuana? I doubt that there's enough there for them to get any use from or benefit from, but there's enough for the regulators to say, oh, no, there's too much, there. So I think it's just, I think that some of the regulations are based on old nonsense. And I think that along with trying to get hemp into Ohio, that the non-science behind the regs needs to be spoken to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Unfortunately, industrial hemp got caught up in the war on drugs conversation, right? And the THC limits, like you said, like we said, they're completely arbitrary. And some states have created greater flexibility around that. I spoke with the hemp program director for Ohio last week, and he said they're now offering a remediation option. So the farmer could either burn their entire crop or remediate the hemp, which is still tons of manual labor. They have to go in and cut off all of the flower, which is the only part of the plant that has the THC levels anyway. So yeah, it is very much not derived from science.
Very interesting. I do want to call attention. So Jacob Harbour put in the chat that there is a presentation of his dealing with a recreational trail along the Mahoning River happening on June 25th. He did place a link in there, so feel free to check that out. We've been communicating via email. I haven't been able to link up for a chat yet, but Jacob's done some great work as far as a recreational trail goes, and I think he'll be presenting more information about that on the night of the event. So Jacob, if you're still on the call, I don't know if you wanted to chime in and provide some additional information, but I just wanted to make sure that I called attention to that.
Yeah, I appreciate communicating with me on all of it. Yeah, so I'm doing this as my project for YSU and American Studies. And the last presentation, last meeting with MS Consultants presenting the active transportation trails along Mahoning, it's pretty serendipitous because that's pretty much exactly, what I've been dreaming of, but the project isn't just the paths themselves, it's also talking about the history along the Mahoning of transportation, and also advocating that in addition to building the infrastructure, that it's an opportunity to tell the history and culture of our community along the Mahoning. So we'll be talking a lot about that on June 25th. I hope everybody can come by to it.
Excellent. I will make sure to put the link to that in the follow-up email so everybody has that information. And then also, in the interest of supporting each other and celebrating each other's involvements, Genevieve reached out to me prior to the meeting and said she wouldn't be able to be here tonight because of prior commitment that she had related to a choir concert that she's having. But she sent me an attachment with the information for the concert that is a file type that I couldn't open. So maybe I can get in touch with her in time to share that information with you all, and you're all able to support her as well. I think it's really nice to be able to kind of connect and build community that way, even if it's not super related to the objectives of the board per se. But so any other lasting questions or comments? We are at 7:05, just in the interest of everybody's time and to respect that. If not, we can close out. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 1st, same time, 6 p.m. And then just be sure to keep an eye out on your inboxes for that email with the information for the next meeting, because I am almost certain that we will have for sure solid information on in-person policies by that point. So thank you all for hanging out tonight and a good meeting. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Justin.
Bye.